Well, I think Kaizer Chiefs had a fantastic season and there was so much expectations. When I say fantastic, I'm talking about the fact that they won the majority of their games. They were leading the log for most of this season and nobody would have thought that they would drop the baton on the last hurdle. And that is why I suppose there's so much pressure now on the technical team, on the players and everybody involved. This is the nature of competitive football. You're expected to win, especially when you create that sort of impression, that you give everybody the impression that you are going to win the league. I think that is why a lot of fans are saying, you gave us hope and at the last moment you took away that hope. So generally, I suppose there was also an element of the type of football. There was a lot of question marks around them playing a more direct game, utilizing the wingers to get a lot of diagonal balls in, and if that failed, they would draw you in and get balls from crosses, etc. Also, a lot of goals are scored from set pieces. But one will argue that when the results are forthcoming, everybody's happy, including your fans, including club owners, including the technical staff. But does that type of football have longevity? I think that is a question that has now been answered, that it doesn't have. You make one wrong move, you don't have a plan B, and suddenly you find yourself in a situation where you lose the league at the last hurdle. All they needed to do was win against Baroka. But because Baroka seemed to have done their homework to some extent, they sort of made sure that Nurkovic didn't get as much service. They ensured that after the first goal, that was a direct ball played from Kune. What a wonderful pass, fantastic pass. Nurkovic chesting the ball down for Billiard, using his skill and scoring a goal that we thought was worth winning the championship. But Baroka had other plans. And was Chiefs able then in the second half to come with a plan B? I would have thought, as a technical person, and they always say hindsight is the best science. But generally, you're leading 1-0, you've got to think about, how do I lock this game? Do I go with the back four? Do I flood the midfield with 3 and 5 midfielders and wait for them to come and then maybe play them on the break? That could have been something that could have been used more effectively. They didn't change it. A set piece then was awarded to Baroka, and we know, as they say, the rest is history. So overall, I think it was a season that had so much promise, but at the end didn't live up to expectations.
You speak about the Baroka game specifically, but is that exactly where they lost it, or when you look throughout the season?
Well, that's a very good point that you make. I think there was a number of games where Lady Luck played a huge part. I think if you look back at the Bloem Celtic game and take nothing away from them, Bloem Celtic were the more dominant team on the night. They were leading by 3 goals, I think it was. And then Chiefs came back. A lot of goalkeeper errors on the night. But the big thing is, are we able to accept it? Because when we are winning a match, we don't want to accept the truth that, listen, we won the game, but there were certain factors. I think if one looked back and said, yes, we won the game, but did we really play as well as the score reflects? Or was it the case that the opposition in some moment lost concentration at critical moments and we got all 3 points? Another game that you can reflect back to is the game when they played against, I think it was Polokwane leading 2-0, going into the game, 2 set pieces, 2 goals, and then giving the ball away. If you look back, I mean, that particular game, the Polokwane player basically passed the ball to Nurkovic. He accelerated, finish was brilliant, take nothing away from him. But those are the small errors that defined this league. And if you look at those errors and you use it as a yardstick and you say, if those errors were not made, could the league have been maybe different? Possibly, yes. But this is why I always say in football, your opposition can determine your performance and can determine the outcome as well. So, yeah, I think there wasn't the consistency that we would like to have seen, where even if you are not able to win the game by a huge score, you grind out the result. A point in question is the game, I think it was when Sundowns won 1-0. Was it to Baroka? Or was it to... They won the game 1-0 and it took a late goal for them to win that particular game. So I'm not sure which game it was, but it was during the bubble. But they grinded out that result. They created opportunities. The last game they played, they had to score a number of goals. I think they had to score 4 or 5 goals to win it. They hit the pole 3 times. They missed a penalty, but they still persevered. And for me, that's a good indication of how a team should be, that if plan A doesn't work, they constantly are able to use different methods and ways in achieving their ultimate objective, which is to score goals.
Now, the post-match against Chiefs, what do they do? The typical South African thing is let's fire the coach. But if you are Chiefs, what do you do based on what happened to change things for next season?
Well, the first thing I need to do, and I think time is of a factor. Time is of a huge factor now because of the fact that they don't have too much time to prepare. The league is kicking off in three weeks' time. You have a situation now where you've got to prepare your team. You've just lost the league from a psychological point. People are down, players are down. You need to get them up again. But you need to make a change in the way the team has been structured. And you've got to go back to taking an analysis, taking an audit of where we are at this moment in time. What can we do to change the situation? Are we going to wait to change the situation 6 months down the line? Are we going to go through what we've been doing? If you do what you've been doing, you'll get the same results that you've been getting. So they can't do what they've been doing. Because surely now, I think teams are very aware of how Chiefs are playing. Take nothing away from it, it is effective. It's always going to be difficult for South African teams to be aerially superior. We don't have that aerial strength that maybe some of the European teams have. But in saying that, I think you can't go on playing that type of football. You've got to go back to your roots. You've got to play the football that has made Chiefs the glamour team, the Perfendi glamour boys. You've got to go back to your roots in playing the brand of football that attracted such a multitude of fans in the past. It has to be both easy on the eye, but it also has to be results driven. Pizzo at Sundowns is a good example. Didn't do too well in the first year. People were calling for his head, but the management was behind him. And when he got it right, they went on to win Champions League. They went on to win the 3 consecutive leagues. So the results are there for all to see. So there's a number of things that you can do. It's easy for me to sit here and say do A, B, C, D. But I would like to say that to be able to change their fortunes, they've got to go back, audit what has happened. In other words, take stock of what has happened, see what players they need to quickly get in, see what players they need to offload. And that would depend on the philosophy, because I could say, go out and buy certain players, but it must tie in with your philosophy. Are you prepared to play the way the current coaches play? Then you must get in players that are good aerially. You must get in players that are more direct in their approach. You must get in players that will suit his playing model, his philosophy. But if you do that, is that the philosophy that you want for Chiefs? Maybe not. And if it is that you don't want that philosophy, then change rather now. Take the pains of a season without maybe winning major tournaments, hopefully winning 1 or 2 cups, but start the process of rebuilding the team. You have to rebuild. Make sure that your academy produces players that are able to fit into the first team with a short period of adjustment. Because you need to have your own philosophy, your own identity of play. The teams that have succeeded over the years internationally have had a good academy that produced players that knew the mentality, knew the culture of the particular club, and were able to grow it. Sometimes it's difficult to buy players that will fit into your plans. I think Chiefs went on and bought quite a few players. They bought the international striker from Zambia, scored a lot of goals there. Only scored, I think, 1 or 2 goals here. They bought some other players that they hardly used much. And that's a waste of money ultimately, because you're buying players that you can't really use. But if you have a playing model, if you have a philosophy, that philosophy will talk to you about what type of players you need to buy. And obviously, if you groom them, if you breed them in your academy, they will automatically fit into your first team. Well, I think a good point in question is Adremano was a player who played for, was it one of the, was Madagascar? Yeah, player. Showed a lot of potential in the, I think it was the African, not the Champions League, not the African Cup of Winners, it was the COSAFA Cup, was it? Showed a lot of promise. But then you've got to take into context that, is that level of competition truly a good indication of the player? And is he that good that he could make it to play, to be a regular at Chiefs? We must understand that Chiefs is a very, very, very big brand. And any player that plays for Chiefs, firstly, doesn't only have to be technically good or physically good, he has to also be mentally, psychologically very strong, because there's so many demands on you to perform. I think if you look at the scouting overall, there has been some impulsive signings. When I say impulsive signings, a player does well, and you watch him over a short period of time, and you base your judgment on that analysis. It is dangerous. To be able to make sure that the player is the player you need to watch him over a period of time. You need to go and look at where he comes from. You need to look at his background. You need to ensure that you speak to people within his locality, his personality, what is his lifestyle, right? What is his mannerisms? Because all of those things make the player ultimately. It's not just his ability to play football. It's what he does outside the field. Is he somebody that likes to party? Is he somebody that abuses liquor, for example? Is he somebody that is temperamental? You know, all those psychological aspects you need to find out. And if he doesn't fit the profile, because one of the things that I found very interesting when I researched scouting, when you look at a club like Barcelona, one of the key factors is that you must be humble. Whether you're an academy player or whether you're a first team player, humility is one of the criteria. So these are factors that you need to sometimes ensure that players have. And if you look at a player over a short period, you're not going to be able to know that. So you're going to make a lot of misses. And when you do have those misses, you end up signing the wrong players. And if you look at the amount of money spent, it actually costs you more in the long run. So I do think from a scouting perspective, you need to ensure that you are 110% sure that this player, firstly, will be able to fit in from a psychological perspective. And then the football will follow. Because if he's a good player, he's not going to suddenly change overnight. But also, as I said early on, you have to take into account the type of mentality, the type of philosophy, the type of tactical approach the coach is going to use for that specific season. And only then do you sign the player if you know he fits into that particular brand of football that is unique. And that's what I want to mention, is that every club has a unique style of play. When you sign a player for Barcelona, when you sign a player for Man City, when you sign a player for Bayern Munich, they know the type of player that they are signing. So there's no confusion. But when you have a situation where every other coach comes in with his own philosophy and style, this is where things start going wrong. Because Coach A will have his philosophy and he signs certain players. Coach B will have his philosophy and he signs a certain type of player, and so on and so on. And before you know it, there's such a contrast between the type of players that they can't gel to play the brand of football that you would like to play. So a coach should come in and he should embrace the philosophy of the club rather than the other way around. Well, in my opinion, every player who's a South African player, even a player coming from Europe, would love to play for Chiefs. Chiefs is one of the most professional entities in the country. By far the best supported team in the country. So they have all the credentials to attract the best players. But what does happen is when Chiefs is about to sign a player, suddenly the price of that player goes sky high. Because you know you can attract other people to come in with bigger money. So when you have money like Sundowns, etc., who can outbid you, the question you got to ask is it really worth signing a player based on the fact that the price outweighs what you think his worth is? So that comes back to what I said earlier on. You have to create an independence. You have to create an independence where you ensure that your academy produces those players. If you look at Man United under Ferguson, their best years was academy players coming through and giving them glory. If you look at Barcelona, at their peak, it was academy players that came through. Of late, Barcelona has made a lot of poor signings. We've seen the type of signings they've made, and you can see what the result of what we see now. I mean, getting beaten 8-2 by Bayern Munich. That would never happen at the time when they had the Xavis, the Nestas, the Busquets, playing as a unit with the Messis, etc. So the best model is invest wisely in your academy. Ensure that, yes, as much as we have our first team performing, we have a 3 to 4 year plan that will ensure that the players ultimately in the future that's going to win us silverware are going to come from our academy. It's going to save you long-term on cost. It's going to save you on many other aspects that would normally force you to become desperate and look in the market. As we speak now, people are saying Chiefs must sign. Who's available in the market? Because as much as you want to sign, there's not, I mean, you see now, the goal scorer, highest goal scorer, Shalulile, has been signed by Sundowns. They didn't waste time. You understand? So now, if you go around looking for Grobler, is he available? What are you going to pay for Grobler? You got Kamati Rasmus, another player. If he does come in, you got to have time to fit him into the thing. Whereas if you had a contingency plan, a plan that had a long-term vision, then it is easy to take a player like we did with Jabu when Mushin Etukral was there. It was great working with him because him and I would be able to interact on a basis where he would say to me, Coach, this is how I want the team to play and this is the type of players we need. And we were very good, not only as colleagues, but we were good friends. So we could interact outside football and say, this is how we see it. And I think that's a very important relationship. I think sometimes at clubs, you have your first team and then you have your academy. And there's such a big gap between the two. They're not able to communicate and share philosophies and ideas. And if they don't have the same philosophy, if it doesn't tie in, then you're going to have a breakdown. If the players developed in the academy are not exactly what the first team coach sees them as, then obviously there's going to be a clash. And when you have a clash, you have problems.